and constitutional. And that's the concern. That's why we're having this hearing. We'll get to our guest here in a second. But with that, I would yield to the ranking member for an opening statement before we get to our witnesses.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good morning to everyone that's here at this hearing. I'm glad that the chairman opened with who instigated this hearing, which is George Hill, and what the purpose of this hearing is. At the end of the day, the purpose of this hearing is to minimize what happened on January 6th and the lawful prosecution of individuals who were engaged in that practice. The chairman wants us to believe that people are being persecuted for their political conduct rather than their criminal behavior. So basically, he's trying to tell us that everyone who's been indicted and prosecuted for January 6th did not engage in criminal conduct. That's the logic of what he's saying, and we've just come so low in this house. It's just frightening to me what people will do to try and minimize the work of those individuals who came to this Capitol on January 6th. This entire Republican conspiracy theory was launched based on the testimony of a so-called whistleblower, George Hill. He appeared for a transcribed interview last year. Mr. Hill claimed that the FBI was using the Bank of America to survey Americans. All Americans? Not all Americans. Everyone who owns a firearm, as the chairman said? Not everyone who owns a firearm. The picking and choosing of language within an entire report is just inappropriate information given to the American people. Give them all of it so that they can see the true picture. Tell half a story, you're not telling the truth. The FBI asked the Bank of America for information on individuals who fit 3 categories. People who came, that there is evidence that they were here on January 6th, that they purchased a firearm in the last 6 months, and, that's key, and, not or, and they plan to come back for the inauguration. And they know that they were coming back for the inauguration based on Airbnb purchases, hotel, RSVPs in the DMV area. And they were individuals who had come on January 6th and know that through those purchases as well. And these were not all of the people that they were looking at, but what was the purpose of this? It was to make sure that a January 6th event didn't happen on inauguration because people were talking about it. They talk, you had up there DMVs. Do we know what DMVs are? I'm going to tell you that. It's domestic terrorists, individuals engaged in domestic violence. That happens. When it's people who fit your political agenda, they're not criminals anymore. They're patriots. They're victims. They're not. They're criminals. And a jury of their peers found that when so many of them have been prosecuted in our court of law. Not by brown shirts, not by Nancy Pelosi, not by Biden's Justice Department, by a jury of their peers. And it's surprising that we don't have George Hill here today, because in the same way that their star witness on their impeachment, Alexander Smirnov, remember him, who was their key witness in the Hunter Biden impeachment probe, until we found out that everything he said was made up and he actually got his information from Russia. We don't know what's going to happen with George Hill, but we can pretty well guess based on the track record. I want to thank our witnesses for being here. We don't always agree on things that witnesses say, but we thank them for their willingness to come and give their thoughts and be questioned by members of Congress here and of this hearing. I particularly want to thank Mr. Fanon for being here with us today. I want to thank him publicly for his bravery and his willingness in sharing his traumatic, harrowing experience so publicly so that we can understand and so that there can be truth juxtaposed to falsehoods. I'm sorry for you and all the men and women who fought on the front lines, just steps away from this room that we are in today, to protect all of us in this building, from staff, from the architects of the Capitol, to members of Congress, to the young people who were here. My experience here today is nothing compared to what those officers went through. And Mr. Fanon, while those of us on the dais were being protected in insecure locations, some of us fearing for our lives, many of us on both sides of the aisle fearing for their life on that day that they've quickly forgotten about after visits to Mar-a-Lago, I want to thank you because you saw it all, because you were out there. You didn't hide, you ran towards danger. You went out to meet the mob. You and your brothers and sisters in blue went out and did that. And I wanted to share just a reminder of what really occurred on that day.
You got right the right people. Try it. I got you, Mike. That's my hand on your gun. Push him back! Clear medic! We need EMTs now! Mike, stay in there, buddy. Mike, it's Jimmy. I'm here. Mike.
That's a battle scene. That's what that is. That's a battle scene. That is not political discord. That's criminal behavior. That's what that is. And while Capitol police officers were slipping in blood on the ground as they fought their fellow officers' fight in that insurrection, those of us who were in the Capitol, those members of Congress and staff, were seeking shelter. And unfortunately, Mr. Fanon, you have met the times that we are in. You have given up your safety to secure truth. Unfortunately, many of my colleagues on the other side know the truth, but they're still seeking shelter from Donald Trump's hordes. They're still seeking shelter from the truth. They want to protect not just themselves, but their political careers, their jobs. They're hiding behind lies for that. We know what happened, not just by those videos and footage, but the nearly 1,000 convictions obtained against those rioters across an array of jurisdictions. Conviction from career prosecutors, not political hacks, with juries of the defendant's peers, everyday Americans who saw the evidence. Evidence that has been obtained by prosecutors and investigators have worked to hold these violent individuals accountable for their horrendous deeds. So, I got a lot of else that I could have talked about, but I guess we'll get to it.
Gentlelady yields back. Without objection, all of the opening statements will be included in the